a documentary on Hamilton County during the year 1812, narrated by Aaron Weaver. The communities within the Adirondack Park's Blue Line all have a unique history of their own. Each town and village develops their own culture through trials, challenges, and the environment around them. All communities in the Adirondacks have much in common because of the mountains, and yet they are diverse because of them. The town of Lake Pleasant is no exception. As you understand the history of this isolated town, surrounded and entwined by wilderness, you will learn of a constant struggle of keeping up with the American progress while living in harmony with its natural surroundings. A town that wants to be proud as Americans, but wants to be left alone. It can be hard to translate this phenomenon into the minds of those who live outside the Adirondack Park. The best way to help you understand the people of Lake Pleasant is by telling you their history. After the American Revolution, the northern and northwestern frontier of New York State was open for settlements. The place that we now call Lake Pleasant and Speculator was once part of the town of Wells in Montgomery County. The town of Wells covered most of what is now Hamilton County. It was impossible for the head of this town, located around the now existence of Lake Algonquin Reservoir, to oversee the other communities being formed up north. The mountains, wild forests, and rugged roads made it almost impossible to govern the town as a whole. In 1812, Montgomery County saw fit to grant the settlers around the lake, Lake Pleasant, their own town. This made it easier for the town of Wells to govern themselves and to allow the new town, Lake Pleasant, to form their own community. However, just as Wells had trouble governing their northern territory, so did Lake Pleasant have trouble governing their northern settlements. Soon, those settlements would become towns of their own, and within the town of Lake Pleasant, a village would be created. Thursday, April 7th, 1812. This day was Lake Pleasant's first town meeting. The town meeting was located in a more humble setting at the home of Joshua Rich. The location of his house was at the outlet of Round Lake, now known as Sacandaga Lake, on Lake Pleasant's shore. Rich's house was chosen because of the location. A good number of settlers lived near there, and paths by foot, wagon, or water all met at this spot. Whether by foot, ox cart, canoe, or boat, all who attended this meeting could travel there by their own means. Because of this location, Joshua and his wife Anna would house travelers throughout the years. The first innkeeper, George Wright, of Lake Pleasant, was elected the first town supervisor. Wright moved from the town of Kanontsistontie, Montgomery County. Wright's Inn was located south of Lake Pleasant's inlet. William Burke Peck was elected first town clerk. William Peck moved to Lake Pleasant in 1811 with his father, Loring Peck. Loring Peck was a captain in a few Rhode Island regiments of the Continental Army during the American Revolution. After the war, Loring Peck became a lieutenant colonel of Bristol and Tiverton, Rhode Island Regiment. By 1811, Colonel Loring and William Peck bought the home of Ebenezer and Amos Green in Lake Pleasant. There, they started a farm with their wives Sarah and Elizabeth. Ebenezer Dunham, Joshua Rich, and Ephraim Page were elected assessors. George Wright, George Peck, also son of Colonel Loring Peck, and Amos Green were elected to build roads. John Dunham was named collector and constable. Plus, Ether Barnes was named constable. Josiah Rich and Joseph Davis were elected overseers of the poor. The town of Lake Pleasant's biggest concern at the time was livestock getting loose from the residents' properties. The main livelihood at the time was in livestock and lumber. Caleb Nichols and Colonel Loring Peck were named fence viewers to help build fences around the community's private properties to contain livestock. Daniel Fish and William Peck were named pound masters, or what we would call today pound catchers. This problem of loose livestock also brought about Lake Pleasant's first law. Swine should not be allowed or permitted to feed or run at large unless they adjudged by fence viewers. Again, it was resolved that any ram or rams that may be found off of or from the enclosure of its owner at any time between the first day of September and the first day of December in any year shall be forfeited from and belong to the persons apprehending and taking up the same. As supervisor, George Wright took his seat with the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County, which on October 6, 1812, was at the county seat in Johnstown. The town of Lake Pleasant had 159 taxpayers. The value of real estate was $138,232. County tax was $39. Town tax was $38.84, and $200 was for roads and bridges. There were no school taxes until the year 1815. Lake Pleasant would not allow their children to be educated for over 3 years. The reason for this setback was because it was too dangerous for the local residents to send their young ones to school.